Hey everyone, so in this video we're going to take another look at KenShape. KenShape is a recently released, easy to use 3D modeling application. What it does is it lets you draw a 2D image and then it converts it into a 3D model. Now, there are four main things I want to mention about this update, and there's a bunch of little stuff that you can just read in the notes if you're interested. All that other stuff is basically file size and optimization, and don't want to waste your time with that. This is really just about functionality. So up to this point, you would draw an image. So whether it's 16, 24, 32, you would click on this and you would begin drawing. Now you have these different shapes for individual squares, but you don't have like a large shape. Like I can't just draw a circle. I have to manually click on every dot and try to figure it out. I can't just have a triangle shape. I have to manually draw each dot and figure it out. Okay, but now you can import an image from any paint program. So if you've saved it as a PNG, you can import it into this. The one restriction is the size has to match exactly. So you know how we're just looking at the three sizes, 16, 24, and 32? That PNG has to exactly match that size. Okay, so that's very important. So effectively, you don't even need to do the step where you're working with their tools. You can do it in any paint program as long as you can save it to that size. So let me give you an example of that. So if we click here on Anime Studio Pro, you can see it's just a simple smiley face, and that when I go into the project settings, it's 16 by 16. So I'm going to navigate to that. So I click on the menu here, I click on load images, and then when you click on load images, you'll just see the normal Windows Explorer, and you just navigate to that image. So I'm just going to briefly pause, navigate to it, and then we'll pick it up from there. So I'll be right back. Okay, so as soon as you click on the image appears. So again, it's certainly not exact, but it is indeed a close approximation of what I drew. So obviously it's having issues with the circles because this is all being calculated to a much finer level than you can actually see because again, this is 16 by 16, but the project lets you make as minute changes as you want. So it is a really close approximation. And again, this is also only 16 by 16. If you're going to import an image, you're probably not going to use that small. You're probably going to use the 24 or 32 because if you're doing 16 by 16, you're probably just going to manually draw that by hand anyways. But as you can see, you do have a circle now without having to manually do that. And then you could always tweak it if you find some oddities. Like if you said, the smile didn't come out right, fine. We just right click, we get rid of the smile, clean it up a little bit, maybe get rid of that pixel there too. But now, effectively, whatever paint program you use, effectively those tools can be used in KenShape because you draw a 2D image with that, and then you import the 2D image. So already you're no longer constrained by the tool set here. So we'll see if they do wind up adding more tools, but honestly, the fact that you can do it in an external paint program now and just import it, it seems like it'd be kind of redundant to put too many tools here now. Now, if you notice over here, when I took the image, this happened. It created the palette for me automatically based on the colors because in Anime Studio Pro, there were some purples for lines, some greens, and that kind of thing. And I think it also added a few that were already here in this, like some of these look like the default colors. Okay, so the first major change, the new functionality is the fact that you can import an external image instead of drawing it directly here. So rather than trying to work with the built-in paint program, you could use your own paint program. Second thing, they've now already increased the color count. This was 16. I even called this out in my last video. I mentioned how I felt that the 16 color limit was probably an aesthetic choice as opposed to an actual functional choice. I've seen lots of voxel-based modeling programs use a lot more colors, like Magic of Voxel lets you use like hundreds of colors. So I figured that the 16 color limit would eventually increase and that it was more of an aesthetic choice because if you think voxel, you probably mainly think like Minecraft, that kind of thing. So they've already increased this to 32 now. So I can presume this will eventually go higher. Again, I'm not part of the development team, so I don't know for certain. But the fact that they so quickly increased this to 32, I wouldn't be too surprised if this gets maybe one more bump. So those are the two big of the four that I wanted to mention. So you can now import an image. You can now have 32 colors rather than 16 colors. You've always been able to click on this up here and then navigate to a PNG, and it takes the colors from it. So that's always been there. It's just they've increased the limit. So it's increased from 16 to 32. So those are the first two big ones. The other ones are kind of minor. You can now zoom in and out. I think that's control. Yeah. So you couldn't do this before. I thought it was kind of odd the fact that it was that it would take up so little of the screen. So again, this is the kind of functionality you'd expect in any Paint program. So it just makes sense they would bring it here. So yeah, so holding Control and the mouse wheel, you can now zoom in. So minor quality of life, but again, it brings it to closer parity with other Paint programs. And there is do and undo. So I'm presuming that uses Control X and Control Z. I believe those are the typical do and undos. So let's just like draw this. And then is it Control Z? Yep, Control Z undid it. And then Control X. Control X didn't redo it. So we'll have to see what does the redo. I'll have to check the documentation, but Control Z is definitely undoing. The other thing I want to mention about the colors, even though they said they increased the limit to 32, for some reason when I opened up a new project, you probably noticed over here there was only 16, so I'm not quite sure why it's not defaulting to a 32 color palette. They probably raised the limit, but didn't actually modify the source image, because all this is just an image that the application is reaching out to. So my guess is they increased the limit, but neglected to change what image it's referencing, and so just want to call that out so that you know that yes, it is 32. It just doesn't default to that for some reason. There like isn't any kind of menu setting. And that was just about it. They did add configuration, and this is just UI scale, so who knows what they'll add later on. So I think that's about it. So you can now import images. You can now have 32 colors per project. You can now zoom in, and you can now do undo. I was pretty sure documentation said you could do redo, so I'll have to look to see how that's done. So I think that's about it. So I hope you found this useful. I will probably do a few more tutorials now that they've added this. And I hope that you found this useful, and please enjoy the rest of your day.